Green deserts, inside China's Great Green Wall project. For centuries, deserts have only grown, never retreated. Sand swallowed villages, storms buried cities, farmland turned to dust. Across northern China, one of the world's largest deserts kept advancing year after year. But then something unbelievable began to happen. A desert started turning green, not by accident, not by nature alone, but by one of the most ambitious environmental engineering projects in human history. China decided to fight the desert, not with walls of stone, but with walls of life. This is the story of China's Great Green Wall. And the question is simple. Can humanity really change the fate of an entire landscape, or are we risking something far more dangerous? China faces one of the worst desertification crises on Earth. Over 27% of its land is affected by spreading deserts. Every year, massive dust storms sweep into Beijing and major cities, darkening skies, choking lungs, and destroying crops. Entire regions were slowly becoming unlivable. The source of this threat is the Gobi Desert, one of the fastest expanding deserts on the planet. Villages vanished, roads disappeared, farms collapsed. So China launched a project unlike anything ever attempted. A living wall stretching thousands of kilometers. Officially called the 3 North Shelter Forest Program, the world knows it as the Great Green Wall. It is already larger than France, and it is still growing. The mission is simple but staggering: stop the desert, hold back the sand, protect cities, protect food, protect the future. Instead of building barriers, China chose to rebuild nature itself. Every year, millions of workers, farmers, soldiers, and volunteers plant trees across the dry north. But this is not ordinary tree planting. This is industrial-scale environmental engineering. Planes and drones scatter seeds across remote deserts. Workers stabilize sand dunes using straw grids that lock the sand in place. Then hardy, drought-resistant trees are planted into this fragile ground. Special species are chosen that can survive brutal heat, freezing winters, and minimal rainfall. Underground irrigation systems deliver water with extreme efficiency. In some areas, satellites guide planting patterns. Nature is being redesigned using technology. So far, over 66 billion trees have been planted. That is not reforestation. That is planetary engineering. And in many regions, it is working. Satellite images reveal something extraordinary. Areas once yellow with sand are now green with vegetation. Dust storms striking Beijing have fallen dramatically over the past 2 decades. Soil is stabilizing. Wildlife is returning. Local farmers report higher crop yields and improved living conditions. Some villages once threatened by abandonment are now expanding again. Where sand once ruled, grasslands and forests are emerging. For many residents, the change feels miraculous. But not everyone is celebrating, because reshaping nature on this scale always comes with consequences. Critics warn that large sections of the Green Wall rely on monoculture forests, massive plantations of a single tree species. These forests may look green from space, but they can be ecologically fragile. A single disease or pest outbreak could wipe out millions of trees at once. Others warn of water risk. Trees consume enormous amounts of groundwater in already dry regions. In some areas, falling water tables threaten agriculture and long-term sustainability. Scientists also question whether forests are always the best solution. Natural grasslands may be more suitable for some desert ecosystems than dense tree cover. And then there is the human cost. Some farmers have lost grazing lands. Others face strict land use rules tied to the project. The balance between environmental protection and local livelihoods remains delicate. China is learning in real time. Early mistakes led to mass tree deaths. Now the strategy is evolving: more native species, more mixed forests, more cooperation with local communities. The Green Wall is no longer just about trees. It is becoming part of a broader vision that includes sustainable farming, carbon capture, ecotourism, and climate resilience. The project is expected to continue until 2050. By then, it will stretch over 45 kilometers, visible from space. A living structure reshaping an entire continent. Other nations are watching closely. Africa is building its own Great Green Wall across the Sahel. The Middle East is exploring massive regreening initiatives. China's experiment may become a global blueprint or a global warning, because this project forces humanity to confront a deeper question. Should we reshape nature on a planetary scale, or should we learn to adapt more carefully to the systems already in place? The Great Green Wall proves one thing clearly. Human engineering is now powerful enough to change deserts themselves. But power alone does not guarantee wisdom. As forests rise where sands once ruled, the world is witnessing an unprecedented gamble. A nation betting that it can out-engineer environmental collapse. The desert is retreating, but the final verdict is still being written. Because the greatest wall humanity may ever build is not made of stone. It is made of living earth itself, their ecosystems. In earlier years, China focused on speed, planting as many trees as possible, as fast as possible. Millions of hectares were covered rapidly, but scientists soon discovered a dangerous truth. Fast forests are not always strong forests. Large areas were planted with single tree species. These trees looked impressive from the air, endless green stripes across the desert, but below the surface, problems were growing. Some trees failed to adapt to local soil. Others consumed too much groundwater. In certain regions, trees weakened surrounding grasslands. Nature began sending warning signals, so China changed its strategy. Instead of forcing forests everywhere, planners began working with natural ecosystems. In dry zones, they restored grasslands instead of forests. In semi-arid regions, they planted mixed forests with native species. In farming areas, they combined trees with agriculture in a system called agroforestry. This created landscapes that were not only green, but stable. Today, the green wall is becoming smarter. Artificial intelligence analyzes soil, rainfall, and temperature before planting begins. Satellites track forest health in real time. Drones map desert movement and detect weak zones before sand spreads. This is environmental engineering guided by data, a fusion of nature and technology. China is not simply stopping deserts anymore. It is attempting to redesign how land, climate, and human civilization coexist. The impact reaches far beyond trees. Vegetation changes wind patterns, dust storms weaken, cloud formation improves, rainfall patterns slowly stabilize. The project is now influencing regional climate itself. This is one of the first times in history that human action is visibly altering weather systems on a continental scale. In cities once buried in sand, skies are clearer. Hospitals report fewer respiratory cases during storm season. Transport systems face fewer shutdowns. The Green Wall is not just environmental, it is economic infrastructure. Every reduced storm saves billions in damages. Every stabilized farm protects national food security. In this sense, China is treating forests as critical national defense, not against armies, but against climate collapse. The project also creates a new green economy. Millions of jobs have been generated in tree cultivation, environmental monitoring, sustainable farming, ecotourism, carbon credit markets. Entire rural regions are being rebuilt around environmental restoration. Desert towns are transforming into green development hubs, but the scale of ambition remains risky. If mismanaged, ecological engineering could backfire. That is why the world is watching closely. Because China is performing the largest environmental experiment in human history. No nation has ever attempted to reverse desertification at this scale. Success could redefine global climate strategy. Failure could become a warning for generations. Africa's Great Green Wall across the Sahel now studies China's data. Middle Eastern nations examine its desert stabilization models. Even Europe is adapting lessons for drought-prone regions. China's project is quietly reshaping global environmental policy. One nation dared to treat climate not just as a political issue, but as an engineering challenge. And this changes everything. For centuries, humanity reacted to nature. Now, humanity is beginning to redesign it. This power is both extraordinary and dangerous. Because once we start reshaping ecosystems on a planetary scale, there is no undo button. The Great Green Wall stands as a symbol of our age, an era where human hands no longer merely build cities, they rebuild Earth itself. And the greatest question remains unanswered. Are we becoming the guardians of the planet, or its most powerful risk? The desert is retreating, but the final outcome is still being written. By scientists, by engineers, by policymakers, and by the forests themselves. Because in the end, nature always delivers the verdict.